What if I told you a $1,000 car doesn't just not exist in America, it's basically illegal? A few years ago, a British YouTuber bought a used K car in Japan, a tiny Nissan Moko, for exactly $1,000. He drove it 2,000 kilometers across northern Japan through a genuine snowstorm, and it never broke down once. So the real question isn't how Japan builds cars like this. The real question is why America can't. The product that shouldn't exist, a K car, is defined by strict limits. A 660 cubic centimeters engine, a maximum height of 2 meters, tightly regulated overall dimensions. They've existed since 1949, and today they make up roughly 30 to 40% of Japan's entire car market. Not a niche curiosity, but one of the most mainstream vehicle categories in the country. Sit inside one, and the surprises start immediately. Reviewers have fit 4 full-grown adults into a Honda N-Box with room to spare, describing interiors that feel more premium than their price tag suggests. Soft-touch trim, heated seats, 360-degree cameras, fuel consumption as low as 3.5 liters per 100 kilometers. Some owners have driven the same car for a decade with nothing more than routine oil changes and belt replacements. But take that same car and place it into the American environment, and the idea collapses instantly. Not because the car stops working, because everything around it changes. Safety isn't optional, but the data says otherwise. In the United States, safety is a legal floor under the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, over 60 individual regulations covering crash structure, airbags, and electronic stability control. Meeting them on a stripped-down microcar has been estimated to add $8,000 to $12,000 to the price alone, pricing a $1,000 idea completely out of legal existence. But here's what most people don't know. A study published in the National Library of Medicine found that in real-world frontal collisions, K cars provide safety outcomes comparable to standard vehicles. Directly challenging the assumption that small automatically means dangerous. Crash test footage of these vehicles regularly surprises viewers who expect them to crumple like a soda can. As one online commenter put it, American car safety, in practice, sometimes just means your car can crush the other one. If that's the real standard, maybe the safety conversation deserves a second look, because a fair fight was never really the point. When even the president noticed this isn't some obscure loophole nobody talks about, in late 2025, sitting in the Oval Office, President Trump brought up K cars directly. "They have a very small car," he said. "It's sort of like the Beetle used to be, very small, really cute, but you're not allowed to build them here." He said he'd directed the Secretary of Transportation to approve production of vehicles like this, and yet the wall is still standing. Federal law requires a K car to be 25 years old before it can be legally imported as an antique. Several states, Massachusetts, Georgia, Maine, have banned them outright, even those 2 5-year-old imports that are technically street legal everywhere else. Remember that $1,000 Nissan Moko from the beginning of this story? A brand new, fully legal version of that exact car with modern safety features, a warranty, and dealer support still cannot be sold to an American driver today. Only the 2 5-year-old version, imported through gray market channels, technically qualifies. The world the car lives in Japan's cities were built around narrow streets, dense parking, and low speed limits. In that environment, a small car isn't a compromise, it's the efficient choice. A vehicle that can turn almost on its own axis and slip into a parking spot most sedans couldn't touch isn't a downgrade. It's engineered precisely for the problem it needs to solve. And K cars aren't a niche product. Living on the margins of that market. At 30 to 40% of total sales, they compete directly with and often outsell full-size sedans and SUVs. This is Japan's equivalent of the best-selling truck in America, not some forgotten budget option. Distance changes everything. America was built around distance. Highways aren't optional, they're central to daily life, and they demand sustained high speed for hours at a time, day after day, year after year. That requirement pushes a car towards stability, durability, and weight, the opposite of minimalism. Add reinforced crash structures, a bigger engine, better sound insulation for highway noise, and suddenly the parts list looks nothing like the one that made a key car cheap in the first place. The moment you adapt a $1,000 idea to survive American driving conditions, it stops being a $1,000 car. The cost you don't see beyond engineering, there's an entire ecosystem of hidden cost. Insurance underwriting, safety certification, a dealer and parts distribution network that adds margin at every single step between factory and driveway. Look at China's electric microcars and you see the same pattern from a completely different angle. A 100% tariff under Section 301, plus 25% on lithium-ion batteries, pushing the total burden to roughly 102.5%. A car priced under $5,000 at the factory gate can easily double or triple by the time it reaches an American buyer. Different country, different vehicle, same underlying wall. The barrier was never really about the car itself. Someone already tried this in America to test whether this is really about willpower or something deeper. Look at what happens when an American company deliberately tries to build the same idea on American soil. That's exactly what Slate Auto did. No touchscreen, no paint, just a wrap over molded in color. No built-in speakers, manual crank windows, sold direct to the customer, no dealership markup, designed from day one to be repaired by the owner in their own driveway. The result? A starting price in the mid-$20, 0 seconds. Still 5 to 6 times higher than an electric microcar in China. Not because Slate got it wrong. They received over 150,000 reservations within months of revealing the truck proof that American buyers want exactly this, something small, honest, and affordable. But even stripping the vehicle down to roll-up windows and exposed bolts couldn't get the price anywhere close to a K car or a Chinese microcar. 5-star crash requirements, battery cell costs, and domestic labor push the floor back up the same floor. Every other American attempt at minimal eventually hits. The wall isn't a lack of imagination, it's built into the ground itself. The hidden trade-off and a voice repeating itself worldwide, neither system is inherently right or wrong. Japan and China prioritize accessibility, putting a working vehicle within reach of far more people. America prioritizes long-distance durability and maximum crash protection, even if that means a much higher price of entry. But scroll through the comments under any Kai car video, and you'll notice something strange. From the UK, Germany, the Philippines, Canada, South Africa, in a dozen different languages, the exact same sentence keeps appearing. I wish we had these where I live, not a handful of people. Hundreds, repeating the same wish, independently, across borders, under videos they've never seen each other comment on. When the system defines the product, at this point the pattern is clear. Cars aren't just products, they're outcomes of the systems they operate within. Japan's system supports small, efficient vehicles built for density and short trips. America's system demands distance, speed, and safety at a much higher threshold, and every vehicle sold there has to clear that bar first. You don't design a car and place it into a system afterward. The system shapes the car from the very beginning, long before the first bolt is tightened. That's why the exact same basic idea can be completely normal in one country and functionally impossible in another, without the vehicle itself ever changing. So, that $1,000 Nissan Moko crossing a Japanese snowstorm was never a technological miracle. And the fact that you still can't buy one, even after a sitting president said he wants to change that, was never a failure of American innovation. This was never really a supply problem. It's a permission problem. It's the result of two systems solving two different problems in two different ways. And until one of them changes, that 100-comment wish, repeated in a dozen languages, under a dozen different videos by people who've never met each other, will keep going unanswered.